The governor makes his case for Medicaid expansion and goes statewide to test some welfare recipients for drugs. A former circuit court judge is sentenced for bribery, and the president takes an historic trip to Cuba. Arkansas Week is next.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
This is Arkansas Week.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Arkansas Week, and we begin with a week that was spring break, maybe supposed to be more relaxing than it actually was. There was a lot of activity in the state, a lot of activity around health care reform, and that is where we begin tonight. Joining us for our panel from the Arkansas Times, reporter Benji Hardy, and Stephen Bronner, a columnist and independent journalist who writes for Talk Business and Politics. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in on this busier than we probably expected spring break week. And the governor this week continuing efforts to make sure his changes to health care reform and the private option get as many votes as possible as we head into this special session set to begin, we're fairly sure, April the 6th. Mm-hmm. And those efforts continue today, Steve, with a news conference this morning where the governor once again got up in front of a big group of folks and laid out his case for a pair of key pieces of that reform. What did we see this morning?
Well, we saw the governor talking about the legislation that has been passed around for his two signature pieces of legislation. One would be the Arkansas Works program, which would take the place of the private option, which is the program that uses federal dollars to purchase private health insurance for adults with incomes of up to 138% of the federal poverty level. His plan builds on that a little bit, adds more responsibility on the part of the recipients. The private option has always been very controversial. We're going to have another. It's been argued about since it was created in 2013, mm-hmm. and it will be a contentious topic again. His other piece of legislation would change a part of the way that Medicaid is managed from its current program to a managed care program where a private company is given basically a fee per recipient, and it's up to them to make sure that the care and the costs come in under budget. If it does, it makes more money. If it doesn't, it eats the difference. And so it has an incentive to try to cut costs, and that will be done in a couple of areas for services for developmental disabled residents, also for behavioral health patients, and for all dental care in the Medicaid program.
The governor has been sort of putting in his Arkansas Works plans a lot of pieces that we read as trying to make more palatable to Republicans who are still very much against health care reform on the federal level, and then also what has been locally the private option. It appears that there is still work to be done and that he maybe hasn't convinced all the people yet that he needs to convince to vote for this plan, at least in the special session that's coming up, Benji.
Sure. Yeah, well, I mean, the governor is constrained, for one thing, by what the federal authorities will allow, the changes that he would like to make to this program. I mean, he can't put any work requirements, for example. I mean, the federal authorities at Health and Human Services that are responsible for administering Medicaid generally have said that's just not an option. So as far as the sort of more conservative reforms that would potentially appeal to Republican legislators who are doubtful about this whole thing, I would say that those have been fairly minimal, really. I mean the Arkansas Works program, it has a few changes from the old private option, but at core it is really, the same fundamental idea of taking Medicaid expansion money to purchase private insurance plans for beneficiaries. Now, I think, and with that being said, I think, the core debate, despite all these rebranding efforts, remains the same as well. I mean, there are some legislators for whom the idea of a program that's funded through Obamacare dollars is just not going to fly ever.
He had a town hall meeting in Conway earlier in the week, and then he had another meeting in Mountain Home in front of the Rotary Club there in the middle of the week. Conservative legislators attended both. those legislators quoted in press reports after, still unmoved by the governor's presentation. How hard a sell? Do we have any sense yet, really? And he said he was optimistic in this meeting this morning. The governor did. Do we have any sense of where we are in terms of trying to his efforts to get the votes that he needs to get a majority vote in the special session?
Well, it's at best close. Since it was created in 2013, it has barely survived. 2014, one of the previous legislators who had voted against it had to be flipped by the state doing major changes to its workforce programs.
That was Jane English.
That's right, from North Little Rock. So at this point, it only takes 9 senators or 26 representatives to stop it. And if you do the count, especially on the Senate side, you get to 8 or 9 pretty quickly. And that's kind of where it stops, but it's definitely around the 8 or 9 area. So he has a lot of work to do. You know, not only is the private option a controversial program, but so is the other one, the managed care program. There is a competing bill out there that would use a managed fee-for-service program, which is sort of like managed care in that a private company would manage part of it, but they don't have the same risks involved. And a group of legislators, some of them who have voted against the private option in the past, are for this program. So it will be 2 controversial issues, both of which must pass with a 3/4 majority that will dominate the state in the next month and a half.
Well, they will need majority votes in the special session, but then for the reauthorization in the fiscal session, which follows on the heels of the special session, that does require a 3/4 vote. And that was a question today,
bill, yeah.
Right? Because it's a spending bill, and that was a question today as to whether the governor would try to go ahead for style points, I guess, or for confidence sake, and aim for that 3/4 vote in the special session. And he said, "No, we're going to go for the simple majority vote." I think.
Although I think, if he gets 50, if he passes it with a slim majority in the special session for the enabling legislation, I mean, I feel like that definitely blunts the momentum of going. I mean, raises some serious questions about his ability to wrangle that supermajority in the fiscal.
Let's talk about on the managed care end of things. So these 2 competing plans. One, the governor has sort of expressed his preference for this competing plan, the Diamond Care Plan, which is structured differently. Both on paper seem to save hundreds of millions of dollars. What is at stake for the governor, whether one passes or the other passes?
Well, I think an important thing to clarify here is that although these are both contentious issues, as Steve said, they're contentious in very different ways. I mean, the Arkansas Works / private option / Medicaid expansion question, I mean, it's so politically loaded with national partisan politics about Obamacare, and it's tied into this idea of like providing for for the poor, and I mean, lots of big ideological questions there.
A lot of biblical questions apparently as well.
Evidently, yeah, that was a phrase that was brought up today, and the governor didn't care for it. But on the managed care side, I mean, a policy question with huge implications for the state and for healthcare. But it's really, sort of more of a transactional political fight about, nursing homes and other medical providers have a lot on the line here. This is traditional Medicaid now. I mean, this is not the expanded population, but these are long-term care populations of people that amount to, well over $1 billion in costs, and that's. I think there's a little less attention paid to it because it's we don't see that same sort of political drama that's reflecting national politics playing out. But instead, what we see is a lot of big, powerful players in the healthcare world in Arkansas trying to protect their turf.
Right. Yeah.
But it is a difference, at least on paper, of $300 million or so over the course of 5 years. The managed care supposedly saves about $1.4 billion. The managed fee-for-service, $1 to $1.1 billion over 5 years. Opponents of managed care say it's too risky, that a private company could try too much to protect profits, or it could do, as has happened in Florida, come back to the legislature and say, this was a bad deal for us, we need more money. They say the managed fee-for-service is safer. The governor said, no, actually the managed care is safer because it's been tried. It's done in about 40 states. managed fee for service is a new concept. We're plowing new ground. He is for managed care.
There was a lot of plowing new ground type terminology this morning from the governor, talking about the historic nature of some of the things he was proposing. I got the sense he was seeking to cast a lot of this as innovation. And of course, Arkansas had been lauded for the private option as an innovative piece of legislation.
Sure. One more, by the way, thanks for answering the question that I failed to answer.
No,
Steve.
you answered the question, it's fine.
I mean, managed care, I think one big question in all that, and I will admit to not being an expert on like a lot of the technocratic details here, but I mean, we were talking about cutting, that amount of savings, in the range of $1 billion. You got to ask, what will be the actual impact on the quality of service? And when it comes down to actually how it affects the beneficiaries of those programs, as people in nursing homes, people with developmental disabilities. And both of the plans, claim to be able to achieve these massive savings through curtailing, just through smarter pricing and all sorts of things like that, cost controls. I don't know. I feel like there's some skepticism there. As far as like the consumer end, well, how will this really affect healthcare?
There are real people on the other end of this equation, obviously. So what do we expect to see over the next week or so? If the special session is set for April 6th, are we apt to see a lot more salesmanship on the part of the governor? And will we see any other kind of competing plans and budgets emerge, do you think, Steve?
I wouldn't. The three bills we have right now, Arkansas Works and the managed care and the managed fee for service, are the result of a year's worth of sessions, committee meetings, arguing, cussing, fussing, discussing.
Right.
I don't see anything else coming regarding health care. Now, there are other ideas that are percolating that could be discussed in the fiscal session or in another session that's coming afterwards that is supposed to deal with highways but could include other things, as the governor said today, such as changing the way we elect Supreme Court justices or not electing them at all. The Democrats in the legislature have produced some bills that would shine a light on some campaign donations or allow victims of judicial misconduct to sue that judge, which we might talk about here in a second. So those are coming up also. But as far as the health care bills, I think this is pretty much it. The special session will probably go fairly according to form because you just need a majority vote. The fiscal session is the one that could be so difficult because you have to have a 3/4 majority vote to pass anything.
Right. Also wrapped up in some of this in terms of reauthorizing Medicaid expansion was the announcement earlier in the week that a pilot program to test some welfare recipients have been upgraded to sort of a full-on statewide rollout. And Benji, this involves the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. We're going to be drug testing that population, some 3,000 people, or maybe more, not sure of the number.
I'm not sure of the number right now, yeah. And this is, so TANF is a program administered in Arkansas through the Department of Workforce Services. This is so we won't be testing everybody. There will be an initial drug screen that will consist of questions that applicants for TANF will have to answer. If their responses indicate that perhaps they need drug treatment, then they will be required to enter drug treatment and be subject to drug tests. This has attracted controversy in part because other states have attempted to do things like this to more punitive degrees in some states. And in general, I believe it's not worked very well. It has a very small cost to benefit ratio as far as like the number of people that such programs have netted who have been found to test positive for substance abuse. So there's just a real question about is it worth it to do this?
And the Hutchinson administration has sort of positioned this as, we need to identify the drug abusers, we need to get them help, a very extending a hand of help to a certain population. Others who are more cynical may say this is more about trying to mitigate costs yet again by maybe removing some people from some of these roles.
Well, the history is that it doesn't necessarily save a lot of costs. But Governor Hutchinson did say this morning, this is not about trying to cut the rolls. This is about trying to identify people who are on, who have a drug problem, while we can find them, get them to a point where they can get help, and then hopefully put them back in the workforce. Now, there's no money for drug treatment, so it's not sure how we're going to pay for them to get the treatment. Presumably, many of them will be on Medicaid or the private option, and they will be able to get some treatment that way, and that will be paid for. But as far as if you test positive and you are on the program, how do you get the help that you need? For some, it's not clear.
How did this go from, as it was positioned in the legislature when it was passed, it was positioned as a pilot program. How did it go from a pilot program to a statewide rollout in just a week?
Well, the administration determined that there was a constitutional question if you just picked and chose.
Right.
Yeah, originally it was going to be just counties that were like border counties with other states. And evidently the legislation, according to the governor, allowed for that. I think that, I feel like a lot of people came out of the session after the bill passed assuming that it was just these pilot counties. So it came as a surprise to me for sure. And I would say, it's the main reason, I see it, the main reason behind this is, and it is a cynical outlook, is political. I don't think it will have a gigantic effect in terms of making a lot of welfare recipients' lives worse, which I'm glad to hear, because I don't think it will net that many people. But I also can't help but feel like, well, this is really about sending a message that we're being tougher on these sorts of programs, and we're holding people accountable, like conservative talking points.
Right. Well, moving on to other institutions here in the state, we have the Little Rock School District and some new developments late this week. As part of this overarching lawsuit that is aiming to fight that district's takeover by the State Board of Education. Benji, this was in U.S. District Judge Price Marshall's courtroom, and it threatened to delay some plans for a new school in West Little Rock, but things tended to work out in terms of getting that done. What happened?
I'll try to sum it up. This is a 2-day hearing. Right. I guess the bottom line is that Judge Marshall, at the end of that hearing on Wednesday evening, did not offer an injunction. He declined the request from the plaintiffs to enjoin the construction of this new school in West Little Rock out on Highway 10 near the intersection of Cantrell and Chenal, for folks that know Little Rock geography, which is significant because a part of the plaintiff's argument was that this school is being built on the very edge of the district, the edge of the city, and it is therefore catering to a more affluent, wider population than really is Little Rock writ large. The plaintiffs were led by Representative John Walker, a longtime civil rights attorney who's been fighting for equity in the district schools in Pulaski County for decades now. And this is a separate matter from the long-running desegregation suit that tied up Little Rock and Pulaski County and is still sort of ongoing in Pulaski County schools. But Little Rock is released from that suit. It's a totally new suit that is primarily concerned with reversing the state takeover of the district back in January 2015. But then there were sort of two other pieces to the suit, one of which was resolved this week with Judge Marshall declining to enjoin the construction of the new school. The other of which has yet to be heard, that concerns construction of charter schools in Little Rock, which Mr. Walker and the plaintiffs say will once again, create a barrier to equity within the Little Rock School District.
So, at the heart of the arguments, the continuing question about racial segregation, and Walker argued that setting up a new school district in a majority white West Little Rock would not improve that situation at all.
Right. Yeah, a new middle school actually, and the argument from the perspective of the school district and a lot of residents of that side of town is, we need a school. There hasn't been new school construction on that side of Little Rock to keep pace with population growth on that side of town. And that's a fair point. I think that the plaintiffs would come back and say, some of those historical patterns of population growth have a lot to do with sort of self-segregation, and which is historically tied to everything in the Little Rock School District that goes back to the 1950s.
Right.
So the plaintiffs would say, well, why is this our priority? And that argument was made, why are you not investing in, say, replacing some of these dilapidated school buildings in Southwest Little Rock, which is lower income, primarily majority neighborhoods. To be fair, Little Rock School District is pursuing a plan to build a new high school in Southwest, but they're moving ahead, I think it's fair to say, with the West Little Rock School a little bit faster, in part because there's a building out there that they're able to remodel and renovate, whereas they're not starting, in Southwest, they're starting from scratch.
Right.
But Walker and the plaintiffs, see that as this is just another sign the district is putting the interests of more affluent, wider populations above minorities.
Well, what was the tone of John Walker after this? I mean, was he? It seemed like there were some victories in some of this for him.
Well, he tried to frame it like that, and he said that in part, I mean, he saw it as a partial victory, or maybe he wouldn't use the word victory, but he got some of what he wanted in that he got Superintendent Baker Curris to say under oath that there will be no school closures for the coming 16-17 school year. And also that the final year of desegregation money that the state pays out to Little Rock School District in the 2017-18 school year, that's a $37 million payment, will be used for the Southwest Little Rock High School rather than construction in West Little Rock. He felt like that was a victory to say like that money has to be dedicated to,
Right. So the shadow of all of this, the 50s and on, it just continues to come on and on. Moving on to other matters, then we had a sentencing this week of a prominent former circuit court judge, Michael Maggio, sentenced to 10 years in prison on a federal bribery charge. And Steve, U.S. District Judge Brian Miller did not hold back in his comments when sentencing the judge this week.
Threw the book at him. He really did. He said that drug dealers get worse than this, and what Judge Maggio did was worse for society than a drug dealer. And so he basically he gave him 10 years without parole, and the reason he did that was because Judge Maggio accepted changed a ruling from $5.2 million to $1 million in favor of a nursing home resident after he received campaign donations, and in fact admitted that that was a factor in what he was doing, and so he got as bad. In fact, the sentence he got was worse than the guidelines, but the judge did not hold back.
I believe the partial quote. There's no question in society a dirty judge is far more harmful to society than any dope dealer. Benji, that was pretty. You were in the courtroom that day. What did you see? I
mean, it was dramatic. It was. I mean, this is a culmination of something that's been going on for quite some time. Maggio originally pleaded in January 2015, I believe, and then I mean, key to understanding the sort of behind-the-scenes unspoken stuff happening in this case is that, I mean, there are other people involved. I mean, you can't, for one thing, how can he be convicted of taking a bribe without anybody being even charged for giving the bribe in the first place? And so I mean, it's expected that federal prosecutors will have more indictments coming down the line. Since he originally accepted that plea deal back in 2015, he's been working with prosecutors, and then that kind of fell apart earlier this year when he tried to back out of his plea deal. He questioned whether the court even had jurisdiction over the case. When the sentencing happened yesterday. Right. I mean, at first it seemed as though Judge Miller was not going to give him as harsh of a sentence because Judge Miller declined an argument from the prosecution that he should be held liable for the entire sum that he reduced the verdict in that original nursing home negligence case that led to all of this. But then the judge turned around and said, like, I mean, as you said, I'm going to depart from the guidelines just given the harm done to society when you have a judge who's behaving criminally.
And we should say Mike Maggio's attorney indicates that there will likely be an appeal, so there will be more on this story.
Which must be filed in the next 14 days, so we should be seeing soon.
Okay. And then finally, we can't go without talking about some history being made in Cuba this week. The president going to Cuba, becoming the first sitting president to visit Cuba in almost 90 years, 88 years or so. A lot of folks back here in Arkansas very interested in what's happening in terms of opening those doors to Cuba, Steve.
And many are supportive. Mm-hmm. You actually had Republican congressmen saying somewhat nice things about President Obama, which is somewhat rare these days nice across the country. But Senator Bozeman is completely for it. Representative Crawford is completely for it. He represents the 1st District, Eastern Arkansas, where half of the country's rice acres are. And Cuba would be a major rice importing country for us. Right now they get their rice from Vietnam. A 36-hour boat ride versus a 36-day boat ride versus a 36-hour boat ride from the United States. So he's very much for it. Senator Cotton, not so much. He says this is catering to an oppressive regime. But many of the state's business organizations, Farm Bureau, Rice and Foods, very much for opening up trade, as is Governor Hutchinson.
There's still sort of a main piece, which is the embargo as a whole, but there's other things that we've been trying to get for a while in terms of just being able to sell to them on credit.
Right. Representative Crawford is trying to get that passed where instead of having the Cubans pay cash, which they cannot do, to buy large amounts, they'll be able to buy on credit. So the president cannot get rid of the trade embargo on his own. He is opening up relations. It has to be a legislative act that would end the trade embargo. Right now, it's not happening. A lot going on. Obviously, presidential politics will change. Will keep much from happening this year. But that's where we are right now.
All right. And with that, we will leave it at there. Thanks, gentlemen, for coming in, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.